We're back again on SaharaTv's countermeasures, and we're looking at the DSS and the penchant disregard for the rule of law. With us in the studio to analyze this issue is the chairman, MBA Ikorodu branch, Mr. Bayo Akinlade, Esquire. It's a pleasure having you on SaharaTv.
It's great to be here.
Well, looking at that topical issue, the DSS or the SSS, according to the act that actually brought it about, and there are continuous penchant for disregard for the rule of law, especially with regards to obeying court orders. Let's get your perspective of this first. I mean, how has this government and the DSS fared with regards to the rule of law?
Well, what we're seeing is not a symptom, but it's rather the manifestation of years of disregard for the rule of law, for orderliness. The country is still finding its way through being a democratic nation. And as long as you have people who were in the former military regime still ruling this country, there is no doubt that you're still going to have such attitudes being expressed through their leadership structures. I always said it right from the time we were voting for former military rulers. I said they can never change because that's who they are. They rule by decrees, they lead by decrees. The law is just an instrument for them to do what they feel is right for the community or for the nation. So what we're having now is just a manifestation of years of not properly defining our democracy, not having the proper leaders in power. We continue to recycle. Fortunately, I was just a kid in secondary school when Buhari was military president, military ruler, and I cannot understand why in a nation this big that we cannot find people in their late 30s and probably early 50s to rule this nation, and we keep bringing back those who ruled as military rulers. So what we find in the DSS, or the SS, as people know them to be, is just militarization of security. And it's not just DSS, it's every structure of the executive, even within the legislature, where people do not regard the rule of law, which is a concept which is protected by the judiciary.
Let me get your perspective on this. Just yesterday, the bill trying to regulate social media was passed second reading at the National Assembly. It seems the federal government itself and the legislative arm of government is trying to muzzle freedom of expressions in this country. One begins to wonder, how will we describe the state of the freedom of expression in this country at this time?
Well, with the advent of social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitters, I don't think whatever laws they make would be effective, except you want to prescribe entirely the whole network system. As long as there's network, or you don't want to be like China that regulates everything. So I don't think the bill will actually see the light of day at the end of the day, but if it does, it's just one in a million laws that we have that nobody respects. So, and then you want to ask, if you make a law, you must make provision for implementation of that law. So even when the government is talking about regulation, there must be capacity, or they must be able to implement those laws. So maybe one of the ways they are thinking is just to shut down the entire internet network system or restrict it in one way or the other. But knowing our country, Nigeria, we'll find our way out of those things.
Earlier on, you talked about the Buhari regime when he was a military ruler in this country, and during that period, there was a decree, the Decree 4, Decree number 4, which was promulgated and ensured that critics of the government, especially journalists and others, are, persecuted or imprisoned if they embarrass the government. And now, fast forward back to this time around, with this efforts to clamp down on dissents and critics of the government. Is Nigeria gradually looking towards a dictatorial or totalitarian government?
Well, you should ask yourself, what has Nigeria ever been? Even right from the word get-go, have we really had a democracy? Look, people think that Nigeria is going to be like the US or the UK. They don't know how those countries got to where they are today. There's really no complete freedom of expression anywhere in the world. People are being monitored far more even in the US than even in Nigeria. I think in Nigeria, we get away with so many things because nobody has time watching over you. But in other countries, they're really watching. They're deciphering all your messages and all of that stuff. But the way I look at it is, the average Nigerian family or head of family controls his family. And we're very much still a very traditional, moral, highly moral nation. And it translates to government. It translates to every facet of leadership in this country. So yes, there will be tendencies to not want people to talk down on you. I can imagine Buhari saying somewhere as, where were you when I was military ruler and you're talking to me, or you're talking about leadership, or you're saying I'm not doing this right or not doing that right. But it's a concept that is in every home. You can't have a child of 16 years old tell his father what to do. I mean, that doesn't just resonate right in our traditional concept. So when we see that in governance, and I've always said this, that governance is an extension of our traditional beliefs. The issue of corruption, for instance, where you have to give a government, person who works in government some money before you get your job done. But go and ask the person who he's giving. He's willing to give because his tradition tells him that if you want something from the person who has it, you don't go empty-handed. So now we have our leaders who translate from being traditional rulers or their children to being government executives, or the local rich man who now goes into government. And then you are coming to ask for something. The attitude that everybody has is that you can't go empty-handed. So we need to, it will take us time to translate from this attitude to what we conceptualize as true democracy and true corrupt-free nation.
Back to the SSS and their penchant for disobeying court order. Let me get, what's your interpretation of the argument being put out by the DSS for not releasing somebody like Omoyele Show, right? Coming down from their refusal to actually release, we have Sambo Dakusuki, we have the El Zakzaki also being, who is still being slammed in detention by the DSS. And now we have Omoyele Show, who, despite court orders, 2 court orders by 2 separate judges, the DSS refuse. I mean, in fact, the arguments they continue to bring out. Let me get your interpretation of some of these arguments. I mean, what's your view about it? For example, they said nobody came to pick him up. The sureties are yet to come and appear. They are supposed to be the one responsible, and that a vehicle could probably knock him down. I mean, you begin to see the mockery of the whole process in itself. So the question is, what does the law really say, from a legal perspective, about someone who is being detained and who has been granted bail by a competent court, but now the state security service is refusing to? What does the law really say? Must a surety go before the SSS, be appear before the SSS, before you?
Well, no, everybody knows this, that even basic rules of law and the rule of law, it doesn't require that the surety should go and pick him up. It's enough for his lawyer to even go, and it's enough for him to just walk out of the place without anybody coming for him. He's a fully grown man, so he doesn't require anybody to come for him. I think, like I said, this is it's not a symptom. This is this full-blown disease that has, it's a cancer that is now out there. It's not today that the DSS would refuse to obey the court orders. But ask yourself, who runs the DSS? The DSS is run by the, I believe, the special advisor on security, the special advisor on state security. And who's prosecuting? It's the Attorney General of the Federation. There are lawyers everywhere. So I would like to place this squarely on the laps of the Attorney General. And what DSS does or doesn't do does not matter. DSS is the client. DSS is the complainant here. And the Ministry of Justice, Federal Ministry of Justice, are the prosecutors. They are the lawyers. They are the ones responsible for obeying the court order. And if they cannot advise their client properly, then it's unfortunate. Now, DSS on the other hand...
I crave your indulgence. What you're saying now, for the sake of our viewers, is that the Attorney General is to be indicted in this regard.
Oh, yes. I mean, who is prosecuting? Who's prosecuting? DSS DSS is a security agency. It's an investigative agency. It's an intelligence agency. When they get intelligence, like what they did with Mr. Omoyele, they reported the fact that, oh, this man is a security risk, a terrorist, or whatever they put on his charge sheets as whatever. They send it to the Attorney General. The Attorney General makes a case out of it. It's the Attorney General that brought it to court. Not the DSS is like the police. So what are we saying here? The lawyers in DSS, the Attorney General's office is in control of this prosecution. So when the court says release the person, because DSS has a detention center, he wasn't sent to the normal prisons. He was sent to the DSS detention center. Even the protocols there are not even supposed to be as complicated as the regular prisons, because the regular prisons are an institution, custodial institution. But the DSS is more of an investigative security agency. They do have the detention center. And the court says this man has met bail, because the essence of bail is simple, so that he can stand trial. That's all. And what's DSS business in keeping him? Why would the DSS? Except there's some intelligence report that we do not have access to as a public, in which case the DSS may, I think, still keep him until...
Some have also, I mean, castigated the presidency itself. I mean, it's the president that is actually undermining the rule of law, even under these circumstances.
Oh, the president
cherry pick or handpick the kind of orders, court orders they decide to obey and the ones they disregard.
Well, the president, people should also understand that the presidency has a lot of pressure, apart from the fact that everything still goes back to the presidency. You have a failed judiciary, it's the presidency. You have a failed legislator, it's the presidency. You have a failed executive, it's the presidency. And who is the presidency? It's the president at the end of the day. So the question really is, because once you appreciate the way the system or the governance works, you may find out that the president may not even have a say. Imagine the chief security advisor telling the president that this is a security issue. That just kills the discussion. If you tell the vice president that, Professor Shibajo, this is a security issue, it kills the conversation, because security is almost everything. The economy is based on it. The rule of law is based on it. Everything else is based on safety and security. Because if there's no security, there's anarchy. So when somebody comes to you and says, it's a security matter, that kills the conversation right there. So we need to, the pressure is on, and I think the pressure is working. The international community is speaking out. But what are we doing? We're not in the day and age of sanctions. So by now, people should say, oh, there should be a sanction about this. But recently I read that Amnesty International has just put people like Showore on prisoner of conscience list. Personally, I think that this is good. Like somebody said, if you want to get attention in this country, get arrested and detained. So we were making a joke about it, and I said, well, I wouldn't mind being arrested, because then I could really get my ideas out there. And I think a lot of ideas are now out there. People are talking. People are agitated. People are actually asking questions. And I think even the whole detention saga has worked out positively in terms of campaigning for a free world.
Mr. Akinlade, we've seen journalists and critics of this government being abducted, detained on trumped-up charges, and imprisoned on terrorism charges. Like we also have Agbajalingo in Cross River. What message does this send to other journalists and, working in the country, and even other critics working in the country? I mean,
well, I've always said that you can't fight it alone, although sometimes you would have to go it alone, because it's hard to find people of like minds. But I've always advocated that whatever you're doing, let somebody else know about it. Because there are a lot of people who do not like the fact that you are speaking out. They only want their views. They don't want anybody else's views. Their opinions are always right. And that's the opinion they want. Now, the society we live in, politics, whatever we call it, is a battleground for ideologies. Your ideology, my ideology, we have a certain passion for those ideologies. And these people that are being arrested, they're being detained or arrested or kidnapped because they're saying something. They're saying something that can change the attitudes and the minds of people. And the people in power need a certain frame of mind that will help them to propagate their own agenda. And they don't want anything getting in the mix of that. They don't want you having a different idea. They don't want to make you have a different understanding. Because if they tell you, oh, you have to go by Isaac John, for instance, and somebody says, no, there's Oduduwa Christian, there are other roads to get to Isaac John. They'll say, no, I want you to go through this. So you have a situation where it's a battleground for ideologies.
It's important and imperative that I ask this question. Shouldn't the president let the courts or the Constitution decide what constitutes a threat to national security, instead of encouraging security agencies to disobey court judgments, or government itself acting with impunity, disobeying extant laws?
Yes, like I said before, we hinge everything on the presidency. But I work with the grassroots every day, with the police, with the magistrates, with lawyers, litigants, and there is so much disregard for the laws at that level. So you can only imagine what kind of disregard for the law you would have at the level of the National Assembly or the Presidency. Like I said, lawyers are in the playing field of this. And if lawyers cannot uphold the rule of law, then who can? And then you have judges making different kind of rulings and judgments, conflicting judgments. Now, if you have a court making conflicting judgment, what message does that pass to the ordinary man? And then a court delivers a judgment, and you find that the lawyer who does not benefit from the judgment says his client is not going to obey that judgment. And what happens to them? Nothing. Even at the lowest cadre, if you disobey a court order today, I can tell you now, there's no immediate sanctions. The court has no capacity to follow up on its judgment. And if you're rich enough, you have to pay the police or pay the enforcement agencies to enforce the judgment. So it is not automatic. A court gives the judgment, and that's another file under the table of the judge. If you disobey, the court wouldn't know. Even if the court knows, they will just make another judgment. And who is going to enforce it? It is a role of the executive to enforce court judgments. And we're even advocating that the court should have its own enforcement mechanism. What would stop the courts from ensuring that Sowore is released, for instance? The court bailiff should just go to DSS and get him out. But there's no such provision. It is his lawyer that would have to go. They would argue it. The judge will sit on his chair, be informed that his judgment has been is not being obeyed, and then you have to bring from something, or from 42 or from 47, and start a contempt proceeding all over again. And then even if the judge says, oh, you're in contempt, who is going to enforce the contempt proceedings? It's the security agencies. The same security agencies that are disobeying the law is whom you rely on to enforce the law.
That's really, really shocking. You've been working based on what you just said about with the police, with the magistrates, and in the grassroots. And I mean, recently you were working on the PDSS. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing?
Well, the PDSS scheme has been around for a while. It's an arrangement between the Legal Aid Council, some NGOs, and the police force to ensure that the rights of suspects are protected in the police detention centers, from arrest to their presentation in court. Now, what has happened is that this understanding has been put in the form of a policy document. It's called the Police Force Order 20, where the police is collaborating with the lawyers, with Legal Aid Council, with other NGOs, with the judiciary, with the NYSC, and one or two other, the National Orientation Agency. And they've collaborated here to ensure that suspects are fully protected, their rights are fully protected in the police stations. Now, this document was just there, like many other documents, it's just hanging there. So we at the Bar Association in Kodu reached out to one of the NGOs that supported this initiative and brought it to life. And they told us about it. We got a copy of the Force Order 20, and we looked at it, and we started implementing it in the Kodu. And it was a bit difficult at first gaining access to the police station for lawyers. But now we're working in harmony with the police because it's a force order. And we have lawyers now go there to inspect the cells and the conditions of the cells. And apart from that, they provide services for suspects who come in, make sure that they call their families or call their lawyers for them, and they can also act as their lawyers temporarily right there in the police cell, but just to ensure that they are not humiliated or their rights are not violated.
So what are some of your major achievements at this time?
Well, we've been doing it for a year, and we recently launched a report, and the report showed that we had intervened in about 70 cases at the police station level. Now, at that level, which means that we've been able to ensure that the parties have settled. In some cases, we've been able to ensure that those cases do not go to court. And in other cases, we ensure that the suspects do not spend more than 24 hours in the police detention. We have another program that after we've resolved that, when they do come to court, we now have another program that is called the Court-Centered Prison Decongestion Initiative, where we have lawyers stationed in magistrate courts, and those that have already gone through the system are now in Kirikiri but do not have legal representation. When they bring them to court, they get the legal representation. Now, it's all done pro bono. We have support. We're doing it in conjunction with the judiciary, the Ministry of Justice, and we're doing it in, we collaborate, and we've received sponsorship from Total EMP, Cooperative Society. We've also received some support from PZ. We've received support from many people to be able to accomplish this. And right now, the interesting thing that we're doing now is the Administration of Criminal Justice Act mandates magistrates to visit police detention centers at least once a month. So what we've done is that we've taken PDSS and we've interwoven it with the administration, that provision. And now we have volunteer lawyers accompanying the magistrates in that visit. And then when the magistrates conclude their visit, the PDSS scheme continues on the ground to ensure that these rights of suspects are not violated. This is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayo Akinlade, for your insightful analysis.
Thank you very much.